Seed corn. I like that. Dr. Fuller, we're live, sir.
Outstanding. How are you today, Mr. Brown?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing real good. Got a full day ahead here on the plateau. Got a lot of stuff to get done. Me and my beautiful bride. I know you've got a meeting. You got a hard out here in 1 hour. So I want to use this time I have with you effectively. Before we get into the day's show, let's talk about the American Warrior Society. You can go to AmericanWarriorShow.com and listen to all the past episodes, any downloadable PDFs. We also have all of our amazing sponsors right there that make the show possible. So please check them out. People like Works Holsters, the finest light-bearing holsters on the market, in my humble opinion. We also have Precision Holsters, makers of belts, mag pouches, outstanding competition lines. They're also getting into the weapon-mounted light space, so please check them out. They got the new Vanquished I have right here. I'll be wearing it today. Love their products. We also have Tip Top Canine. You ever thought about having your own canine training school with all the infrastructure and franchise opportunities available? Please check them out as well. Dr. Fuller, as you know, today I posed a question to ChatGPT. So I wanted to ask AI, what are the 10 most misunderstood aspects of self-defense? And I thought, like you said, we would use this as seed corn to maybe share some anecdotal things with our audience. Mr. Michael Chantilly is on. Speaking of audience, Will Rhodes is on coin number 2269 from Missouri. Will Parker's on coin number 800. What's this coin number business, Dr. Fuller?
Well, join the club, get a coin is really how it boils down. Members of the American Warrior Society are beneficiaries of many, many fine perks, and one of which is the coin.
Absolutely. So take an opportunity, take a free test drive on Mr. Mike Sickland and I. If you become a life member, you get the new gold coin. And if you're a yearly member, you get the silver coin. Of course, if you're a monthly member, you get the beautiful polished black coin, just like we've always been doing. So we got the training vault packed full of everything you need, because you'll see a repeating theme today, because I did read over the show. I pasted it as it was written. I didn't change anything for additional context. I thought that's where I would lean on you, Dr. Fuller. But you will see a recurring thing, training, right? And this is something that Mike Sickland and I have gotten some pushback on in the past. Nasty emails like, you're just pushing training because you guys have a training company. And it's like, really? You want to, is that all you think we're pushing training for? What do you think?
Well, it's an easy fruit to pick. But my recollection is the way you two both generally approach the concept of training, and certainly the way I've approached the concept of training, is get the training. Yes, you can get it from Mike Seeklander and Rich Brown. You can get it from TC Fuller, but you don't have to. And I don't think you've ever, to my recollection, ever said, you must come to us. You say, look, there are options out there. We are one of them, but get the training. And that's really the point, to my mind, of the American Warrior Society and the American Warrior Show in particular, is to extol the virtues of intelligence, knowledge, training. And look at how many hours both you and Mike Seeklander have put out in free training. Yes, is there a business aspect to it? Certainly there is. Should it be something that people begrudge you for? I don't think so. I mean, the day you become merely a corporate shill is the day I will probably sign off for the last time. Because the idea here is to help people protect themselves and to do better in life from a variety of angles and threats. And the American Warrior Society is a conduit for that concept of training, to my way of thinking.
Yeah, I appreciate that. When I got out of the Marine Corps and went into the Marine Corps Reserve Unit, the 4th Marine Division, through their public affairs office, hired me to put together a women's threat management program. So I brought in, of course, Seeklander, who was my good friend back then. I brought in some other, because I was a law enforcement officer at the time and a Marine Corps reservist. So I brought in some other Marine reservists who were cops, and we put together a really cool program and taught it to the people here in Tennessee. Where I'm going with this is, I remember the public affairs for the Marine Corps was like, they had me going on these news stations to talk about it. So this is 1995. 96, somewhere there. And I remember the first time I walked into the studio, the two anchors were like, It was a commercial break. They're like, "Are you the self-defense guy?" And I'm like, I guess I'm the self-defense guy. They didn't know my name, but that was the thing. So that was 30 years ago. So this isn't something that you and I just kind of bumped into. This is something that we've been actively involved in. And I guess that's my only problem with get the training and then you just allow people to go wherever they want, because you and I know we can discern the wheat from the chaff, the good from the bad, the dangerous from this is a good idea. And I don't know that most Americans have that ability any more than I would have the ability to decide whether this was the appropriate piccolo player for my daughter. You know what I mean?
No, I agree 100%. I mean, telling people to get training does not obviate their responsibility to get good training and to do their research and to do their due diligence. And, let's face it, today it's much easier than it was in 1995, for example, to vet your trainers. But you should vet your trainers. Mm-hmm. If I was going to go out and drop $1,000 on an antique chair, I wouldn't just walk into any old antique shop and buy the first one I saw, right? I mean, I'm spending my hard-earned cash, and I don't know a thing about antique chairs, just to be clear. I know you can sit in them, generally speaking. So it'd be foolish of me to go drop that kind of coin and not do research on my own. Talk to people that I trust, do some research online, figure out, oh, it's a Louis XIV. Oh, it was, oh no, it's made out of balsa wood. That's a bad idea. So the same thing applies to training in my mind.
No, you're obviously, I think you're right. Because I teed up the question. But speaking of training, man, we've got the high risk environment course coming up this fall in East Tennessee. Dr. Fuller will be there. Justin Danger Carroll will be there. Mr. Mike Seeklander will be there. Will Parker. It's going to be an all-star cast, man. We're going to spend a week together, breaking bread together, living in close proximity to one another, and learning some really good stuff, man. So hopefully, if you're interested in learning more about that, go to shooting-performance.com and you can find out more. Let's see. We got Manfred on in Pensacola, Florida. We got Bruce on up there in Michigan. James is on from Massachusetts, coin number 1702. Let's see. Manfred says, DM me the information that I need to get started. Brother, we'll take care of you, sir. Okay, let's get into the show, Dr. Fuller. As we said, asking AI about self-defense. The question posed to ChatGPT was, what are the 10 most misunderstood aspects of self-defense? And this is the first one it come up with. Self-defense is always physical. And it's saying that's not true. Situational awareness, recognizing threats early, avoiding dangerous situations, using communications and de-escalation techniques to prevent the violence before it starts. I thought this was a really cool place for AI to start. What do you think?
I agree. I guess the Terminator is on his way, huh? Look at this. That's actually a very insightful perspective, and one that has been spoken of on this show many times. I mean, the best way to win a fight is not be there when it breaks out, right? We've said that countless times on the show. And that seems to be AI's perspective as well here. Don't be there. See it coming, keep your head on a swivel, recognize what those threats are, avoid them completely if you can, talk your way out of it if you can, do everything you can to avoid that violent confrontation. And I think that's absolutely solid advice.
When I started BJJ back in 2015, my coach said, and he knew a little bit about my background, he's like, Rich, what's the best place to defend? And I think he was looking for like the closed guard or something. And I go, a place that's not being attacked. And he's like, I don't know what that means. And I'm like, seemed pretty damn obvious to me, but I think this is exactly what this is speaking to, man. Yeah, self-defense. And Steve Tarani wrote, who's been on the show many times, friend of the show, good friend of Mike Seeklander's. I think he taught with him at the Air Marshal Academy. He has a book called Prefense, and it's all about this topic right here. So if you want to check that out. Speaking of books, Dr. Fuller has 3 amazing books, and they are No Safe Alternatives, Empathy for the Devil, and Painting Over Rust. You can always find those anywhere that books are sold, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or you can hit up the links in today's show notes. We'll take you to Dr. Fuller's website, and if you talk kindly to him, he might even autograph one.
That's very true. I'm always happy to engage with members of the American Warrior Society, and I've had quite a few reach out to me personally and have me personalize books for them, their parents. They make outstanding gifts for any occasion.
They do. Absolutely do. Number 2, legal defense is an excuse for violence. It's saying this is misunderstood. It says using force beyond what's necessary can lead to legal consequences. Educating oneself on these laws is essential to avoiding legal pitfalls.
Another topic of oft conversation here on the show, particularly when you have friend of the show, Andy Rubonka, on talking about things. I mean, we talk about this all the time. You can win the fight and lose after the fight. And, certainly winning the physical confrontation, avoiding the physical confrontation is best. But you need to be cognizant of the fact that in a litigious society like ours, the legal consequences are attached to every single use of force that you find yourself involved in. And that is both civil and criminal. For those who don't understand the distinction, criminal puts you in jail, civil puts you in the poorhouse.
Yeah.
And
they both suck.
Yeah, then they both suck. And frankly, if you are charged in or arrested, as you likely will be in a use of force case, and charging occurs, your expenses go up. Even if you were ultimately exonerated and ultimately freed, you're still going to have to pay a lawyer. You're still going to have impacts on your social standing, your community. Your wife will look at you, or your husband, whoever, will look at you differently. Your children will look at you differently. Your neighbors, and there are social costs involved and there are financial costs involved. And you really need to think it through. You need to get the training. You need to know what the rules are of the game that you are considering playing. And you need to play within those rules, which feeds back into our last point that the best thing you can do is avoid the fight altogether.
Yeah, I think I was just, as you were talking, Dr. Fuller, I was thinking some of this kind of leans into what we talked about last week, and that was everyday carry and permissive environments, semi-permissive environments, and non-permissive environments. And if I may, a good little trifecta might be the top 10 tips we did for winning the fight with concealed carry, the non-permissive environment, EDC discussion, and then maybe even this one. Because it also talks about, for those that will listen to the podcast to come and you can't see the slide, ChatGPT says self-defense is governed by laws that vary by jurisdiction. You got to know the jurisdiction you're in, that you're traveling through, and you're traveling to. Because, if it's not imminent, the threat is not imminent and proportional, you can really get in trouble.
Well, just look at the audience this morning, right? We have people here from all over the country that are watching the show. The laws in Massachusetts are much more restrictive than the laws in the Carolinas when it comes to the use of force in self-defense, or even just simply carrying a concealed firearm. If I walk down the street and a gust of wind catches my suit coat and blows it open, and somebody sees that I have a firearm on my hip, here in the Carolinas, no one bats an eye. And it certainly isn't a violation of law. In Massachusetts, you have to be very cautious of that very same set of circumstances, because you can be charged with assault if somebody sees a gun on your hip in a horror. So as ridiculous as that may sound to the vast majority of us that aren't living in Massachusetts, for example, them's the rules, folks. And you may feel like you're being railroaded. You may feel like this is a horrible miscarriage of justice, and you may feel that way from inside a jail cell. Yeah.
You as a 20-something year FBI agent, you could go anywhere, carry your firearm on a plane, do anything, go anywhere, right? With your credentials and your training and so on. It's interesting to me because I never really had that, as a police officer in a jurisdiction, anywhere in the state of Tennessee, whatever, or as a Marine, sometimes I could carry places where other people could never carry. But where I'm going with that is, it's odd to me, and I think it might be odd to other people, if Mike and I go train federal agents in a very restricted, like we did one time in Portland, Oregon. So on that range with these guys, we're running a gun and teaching them things that are going to keep them safer and blah, blah, blah. And then to go to lunch with them, it's like, nope, can't have guns anywhere near me. I got to completely be disarmed, the same way in New Jersey and many other jurisdictions. So I think this is more complicated than your average person realizes, especially with constitutional carry. It really gets kind of muddy. In my opinion.
A lot of the constitutional carry states, interestingly, which allow you to carry without any government permission slips,
Mm-hmm.
will still issue you a government permission slip because you may need it in another state that has reciprocity.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have the carry permit from the state you live in, like, for example, I lived in Vermont for 10 years. For a while, it was the only constitutional carry state.
Mm-hmm.
You could go to a state that had reciprocity, but if you didn't have a little piece of paper that said you had a carry permit in the state of origin, you have a problem.
Oh, yeah.
You have a problem. And you got to know these rules, folks. You got to know these rules, because just sitting in your car yelling at the cop, my rights, my rights, my rights, is not going to help you. It's just not. And the internet is full of video of people yelling my rights as they're getting drug out of their now shattered window and thrown on the ground and put in handcuffs and driven off to jail.
There was that case recently on Dr. Phil. I don't know if you saw it, down in Jacksonville, Florida. A young man, dreadlocked, didn't want to get out of the car. They finally have to bust the window. Did you see this? And they end up punching him in the face. And of course, Benjamin Crump and Al Sharpton, everybody was running down there to make their millions, and And this morning I saw that the state of Florida Attorney General had just released that the police officer did nothing wrong. And of course, I was like, how is this possible? We got the video evidence. I'm like, because what he did was legally appropriate. So like Dr. Fuller said, and you can watch it and read it for yourself, but the kid is fumbling around. There's a knife on the floor. The cop can see the knife. The guy won't raise his hands like he's being ordered to. He's got his hands down, dangling near the knife, and the police officer, after breaking the window, just punched him right in the face and drug him out. And to me, as first I watched it, I'm like, I don't know what you wanted to do. What did you want him to do?
Right. Get stabbed.
I mean,
if you got one weapon, does he have another? I don't know.
Right.
He's also driving a narrative at this point. He did something that got him pulled over.
Mm-hmm.
Then he's not following the officer's directions. And I promise you that had he early on simply said, yes, sir, no, sir, I'm sorry, sir, I dropped a knife on the floor, sir, I'd like to, had he comported himself appropriately, race, hairstyle, Benjamin Crump, none of that would have come into play.
Exactly.
None of it. And it's something that's often lost. But people, I think it's a testament to our society that a lot of people are just appalled by the concept of interpersonal violence.
Mm-hmm.
It's completely outside their experience, which I think is great. I think that is a testament to the professionalism of our law enforcement and the efficacy of our law enforcement perspectives in this country.
And our war fighters for keeping that shit overseas, right?
It's outside their experience. So when they do see it, it's appalling to them. It's awful, but it's lawful. Because of some people, you simply have to apply force, which is why it's legal for police officers to apply force. Certainly it has to be reviewed. Certainly it needs to be done so with transparency. But just because it bothers you that some young man got punched in the face doesn't mean it was illegal. And it doesn't mean that it was a miscarriage of justice. Yeah. And it also, in my mind, and I always come back to, okay, he got punched in the face. Yes, the officer used force. Why? Mm-hmm. What did you do? Because I'll tell you, I was in law enforcement for 20 years. And I didn't punch nearly every person I met. I mean, I just didn't. I didn't use violence on probably 99% of the people I dealt with.
That's right.
I'm sure the same is true with you, outside of jail environment. Honestly, even within jail, you probably didn't have to use violence that much. Mm-hmm. So it's an exception, not the rule. But of course, in our modern society with video cameras everywhere, people are seeing it and being exposed to it a lot more than they were a generation ago. And it hurts their little feelings.
Oh, the closed hand strike is sometimes appropriate, but it never looks good. It's like go take yourself in the Wayback Time Machine back to 1992 with what was that gentleman's name on the side of the road in L.A. Rodney King.
Oh, right.
It's like use of a baton never looks good. And I was talking to a friend of mine, and he as a police officer, and I was like, man, people use pepper spray more. It's like, well, they don't use it because it takes so long to decontaminate after it's over with. I'm like, yeah, but when they decon, they're fine. They're not beat to hell. They're not sitting there in a wheelchair with a face swollen up to the size of a basketball. Like, not that optics needs to play in a lot, but I mean, this is a thinking man's game, I guess, is what you and I are going to be saying a lot, right?
Oh, it's very true. And the higher up in rank you go, the further removed you are from the point of the spear, the more important that becomes.
Yeah. Let's see here. James says, yeah, to think we were once the cradle of liberty in Massachusetts. Will Parker says, Andrew is offering his free class tomorrow. So the Andrew he's talking about is Andrew Branca. Please go to lawselfdefense.com. I believe that's Andrew's website, and find out if you can get in on that class, because you won't regret it. And if you can't get in, guess what? That's okay. I got Will Parker coming down this fall in East Tennessee. He's going to be teaching it here. You can get it full one-day seminar on the law of self-defense. Of course, Dr. Fuller will be there to add his own anecdotal perspectives on this as well. You must be armed to effectively defend yourself. ChatGPT is saying this is a misunderstanding. It says that most successful self-defense cases involve quick thinking, body language, and strategic movements. Awareness and verbal tactics can sometimes prevent a physical encounter altogether. I think you and I would both agree with that.
I absolutely would. And I've said it how many times on the show. My first line of self-defense are my tennis shoes. Right? I mean, they really are. And look, 20 years in the FBI, I've been a firearms instructor for 30 years. I've been a hand-to-hand combat instructor for the FBI. I paid for my college prep school and my undergraduate degree by teaching martial arts. I was a competitive martial artist for a lot of years. That being said, with a resume like mine, I've been in infantry combat in Afghanistan and Iraq. With that resume, my first thought at this point in my life is leave. Right? It's not fight. It's not, tear my shirt open, howl at the moon and attack. None of that. My first thought is, how do I get out of here? And all of those tools that I have to bear, that I have with me, both in my head and on my body, are directed towards that one concept. Get off the X, right? Get out of the fight. Leave. This is not my problem if I can avoid it. And I would say that's probably a pretty good starting point for most people.
I think that's right. And I want to cue in on something. You see a lot like this slide here. If you're listening to the podcast, you can't see it. Thank you to the 23 folks watching us live. Really appreciate you guys taking the time. Please like and hit that share button. If you join this content and you're on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Why not? Doesn't cost you anything. The idea, though, of verbal tactics and verbal judo and verbal de-escalation, if you don't speak the language of the person assaulting you, you could make things worse. Like, for example, I use this in our communications classes. If I come in and say Martin va, or if I come in and say Ohio gozaimasu, I'm saying the same thing, but I'm just saying in different languages. One is in Japanese, say good morning. One is in Scotch Gaelic to say good morning. It still means good morning, but depending on how the person, receives that information. I say all that to say the criminal that's violently, feloniously assaulting you, because we're not fighting. This isn't about fighting. This is about defending yourself from a violent, felonious assault. They may not communicate the way you do. So if you say, take your poopy pants hands off me, I don't think it's going to have the same effect as if you say, get your fucking hands off me and don't blink. Because one conveys strength and one conveys weakness. So definitely, I'm not the go-to burning bush on verbal de-escalation. There are some great books out there. I encourage you to read them and find your guru, but you need to understand who you're talking to and how you communicate with those people. Would you concur with that?
Absolutely. And that's true of anything, not merely a violent confrontation, but the fact of the matter is you're going to speak differently to a junkie in an alleyway in an inner city than you are to a bank president or a college professor. You're simply going to communicate differently if you want to be understood and if you want to communicate effectively. So again, look at your environment you can't prepare for every situation, but you can look at your common environment and prepare yourself accordingly. Look, if you live in South Texas, some level of fluency in Spanish is probably helpful.
Amen.
If you live in Louisiana, maybe some Creole, maybe some French might be tools that you need to put in your toolbox.
It's kind of a Dale Carnegie kind of situation too, is it not?
It really is. It really is. But hey, folks, a smile and hands up can get you a long way with some folks. Hey, my bad.
Absolutely.
So, and it looks better if things go sideways. Because again, you're driving the narrative, right? You're painting a picture that you're going to need to be able to present potentially to law enforcement or a court. And you don't want that picture to be, you cussing somebody out in English when they don't speak English.
Yeah.
And you
Johnny,
just want to try and avoid the fight.
No, absolutely. I got an anecdote from that because Ted has just reminded me of something here. Johnny King is on from Kentucky. Edmund Scarborough is on. He is coin number 2062. Will Rhodes is definitely worth taking the class. Tony says, good morning from Rhode Island. Ted says, the age of video streaming, watching someone be stomped to death by a pack and filming it with commentary. And the commentary was, ooh, yeah, agging and on. But again, I think this speaks to know where you are and pick your battles, because what started that beating, I think, that he's referring to in Cincinnati was the white guy surrounded by a group of African Americans. He slapped one of them. And you may think that this is between me and you may find out that no, Pookie, Ray Ray, and Skittles also want a taste of some of this. And you just gave them their opportunity. So, I mean, that in this day and age, that's just dumb, folks. I mean, you got to know where you are and kind of act accordingly.
Recall the gentleman with the knife in the river a year or two ago.
Apple River stabbing, yeah.
Right. Didn't really understand that he was in a situation where he was on the wrong end of a pack.
Yep.
And, we saw how that played out.
And he's going to die in prison someday. That's a fantastic show. I don't know if I told you that, really highly, a lot of downloads on the back end on that show you and I did with Andy Branca. Please go watch that show. It's excellent discussion of self-defense. I think we talked about that one. Yeah. Body language. Yeah. Number 4, self-defense is about beating the attacker. So this is a misunderstanding from what ChatGPT says. It says the primary goal, and I added this for context, primary goal of self-defense is safety and escape, not winning a fight. Techniques are designed to create an opportunity to get away, not to engage in prolonged combat. Overcommitting physically can increase danger or fatigue, reducing the chances of escape. I really like this one, Dr. Fuller. What do you think?
I absolutely agree. And this is true for you as an individual. It's true of bodyguards working protectees. It's true of any social use of violence. Your chance of winning is may be great, but it's not 100%. And frankly, and I know this, you've had this experience as well as I have. You get in a fight and win the fight, you can still end up in the hospital. Right? You can still end up severely injured. You can still end up sued. You can still end up jailed. You can still end up dead. Right? I won it now. Bad guy loses right now, but I die later. Whether that's from the actual violence that took place or merely a medical event that's brought to the fore by the interpersonal violence. It's not about beating. It's about prevailing. It's about changing your definition of winning. For me, winning a fight is not me standing with my foot on the conquered, beating my chest. Me winning the fight is never having another fight the rest of my life. I'll call that a win. I've had enough of them. I don't need any more. I have nothing to prove to anybody. So why? They're fraught with risk, and the upside is pretty much I'm right back where I started. That's the upside.
I write about this in my book. When I was working corrections, it was a very, in my opinion, the uses of force I'd done throughout my career. This is really a nothing burger, completely nothing burger. And we're in a correctional setting, so there's video cameras everywhere, and it's going to tell the tale that I wrote in my use of force report. So there's should be no surprises here. And yet I go into work a day or two later, and I think it's Friday. And I hear the lieutenant talking to the transportation officer, and I'm just getting the mail for our building. And he says, inmate Armstrong, he asked the lieutenant, the transportation officer does, inmate Armstrong would like to know when he can go and swear out the warrant for Officer Brown's arrest. And I'm like, I got my back to him. There's only 3 people in this office. And the lieutenant goes, he looks over, lazily looks at the calendar and goes, Monday's a federal holiday. He can see the magistrate on Tuesday and get that warrant for Officer Brown's arrest. And then he goes back to work. And I go, what?
Can we talk about this?
I'm like, do I need to start picking out my own set of orange jumpsuit now? And I wasn't laughing because, of course, I'm kind of freaking out.
Yeah.
And he looks at me. He's like, well, hey, Officer Brown, the inmate has his rights and he thinks you assaulted him. So why shouldn't he be able to go down and swear out a warrant for you just like anybody else? And I'm like, Holy shit. So I went and, what they did not know is they had initiated an investigation when he made the claim against me. The investigation had already been done. I'd already been exonerated all the way up to the city attorney. And these clowns had no idea. So they were going to let this happen. So, but once you put hands on somebody, even when it's insanely lawful, you don't know what's going to happen. And you and I talked about this last week too.
All right. Other people now get a vote in your fate, right? You've placed yourself in a position, or been placed, frankly, in a position where others have input on what is going to happen to you. And their motivations may not be the same as yours.
Right.
Right. They may think you're a nice guy. They may like you, but hey, I've got re-election coming up and I need to burn down, this white corrections officer in order to fuel my campaign with this other group.
Yes.
Hey, I'm sorry, bummer for you, but I got to keep my job. Or I just hate, bearded white Scottish cops from the plateau, or any number of reasons. I mean, this is the same reason that you're so cautious when you approach a vehicle in a car stop. You don't know what's going on in that guy's head. You don't know what happened. He may be fleeing the scene of a multiple homicide, and he thinks you've got it. So his motivations and your motivations are not necessarily the same. And witness those two gentlemen you're discussing. You guys are on the same team.
Right? Exactly.
You're all working in the same place. You're all working with the same people. You're all following the same rules. But such is the way of the world these days that, hey, I love you, Rich, but, turn around, put your hands on the wall.
Exactly. Yeah. Alan Kelly says, running late. Good morning, gents. Coin number 1571 from occupied Virginia. Ed Scarborough says, Kentucky is castle doctrine state and stand your ground. Those don't mean the same things. That's jurisdictional dependent. You can say, well, there are 30 states that are stand your ground states. However, the laws for stand your ground are nuanced in every jurisdiction. So it's definitely not one size fits all, folks. I wish it was. It's not. Number 5 misunderstanding, Dr. Fuller, is training isn't necessary. Proper training enhances confidence, teaches effective techniques, and helps you respond instinctively under stress. Many self-defense tools require special knowledge and about their use and limitations. Regular practice ensures you're prepared when needed.
It's very well said. I mean, right off the bat, that first sentence jumps, and I think it gets short shrift in the training community. Proper training enhances confidence. This goes a long, long way, and much further than we generally discuss in the world of the criminal. And I've talked about on the show on occasion before where I've had this experience. I'm sure you've had it as well, and most police officers have as well. I know for a fact that if I'm standing 7 feet from you or greater, and you give me a second and a half from concealment, I can draw my weapon and put 3 rounds in an 8-inch circle in the middle of your chest all day, every day, weather be damned. It doesn't matter what the circumstances are. If you give me a second and a half, I know I can do that. Well, that gives me a certain level of confidence. Mm-hmm. If I am standing and there's a table between us now, we're talking over a table, because now I know it's going to take you at least 3 seconds to get around that table, which gives me about a second and a half to realize there's a problem, which puts me in a vastly superior position because now I know what I can do in this circumstances. So I'm confident, and that confidence is going to come across. And in particular, criminals pick this up. They're not magic, but they're predators.
That's right. And
predators know when they're in the presence of other predators. And most predators, they don't want to fight, right? Look at all of your predatory animals out in the wild. They don't walk up to their chosen dinner for that evening, tap them on the shoulder, square up on Marcus or Queensberry and go at it. They're ambush hunters. Almost every one of them out there. They sneak up on you and they attack you. They don't attack the strongest member of the herd, right? They look for the sick, the lame, the weak, the outcast, the person not paying it, or the creature not paying attention. That's who they're after. If you can approach things with a level of confidence based on your own self-awareness and your own knowledge of what you are capable of doing and what you are willing to do, which may not necessarily be the same thing, that confidence will go an awful long way to keep you from having to get into it. And I've had that experience in law enforcement. I know you've had that experience in law enforcement where you know just exactly what could go your way and what won't go your way in the situation. And the bad guy picks up on it. And you know what? Today, this guy pointing the gun at me, telling me not to move, I'm going to take my chances in court. I'm not going to take my chances with this guy. And that's really a position you want to be in.
Yeah, when I've been training with folks, this going all the way back to days of even the Marine Corps, like up till now. And if I feel somebody touch me like weakly, as we're doing combatives or BJJ or something, it pisses me off. It just brings out something primal in me. But if somebody grabs me like, oh, a man's got a hold of me, I immediately know. And I think I told you I'm listening to Inside the Mind of BTK by former FBI profiler John Douglas. Fantastic book. Very sick, but you're getting inside the mind and understanding how he views victimology. And BTK, the Dennis Rader, the serial killer out in Wichita, Kansas, he would write in his journal, and he'd be pissed off if he would surveil these women and make sure there was no man in the house so he could enact his sick sexual fantasies as he killed these women. And then the night he is waiting in the house for the person to arrive, in walks the brother or a boyfriend he didn't know about. And he's like, man, that screwed everything up. He doesn't want to deal with that. If he sees a man coming in and out with that woman, no matter how much he wants to take her, he moves on. Why? Because like you said, a lion doesn't attack that's the strongest gazelle in the herd. No, it's the weak and the lazy. So don't be perceived as that. I mean, we could hammer that drum all day long, but I think it's incredibly important. Number 6, size and strength always matters. Says this is a misunderstood concept. Says while larger and stronger individuals may have an advantage physically, most self-defense techniques rely on leverage, speed, and precision. Skilled practitioners can effectively defend themselves against physically larger attackers. I'm going to push back a little bit on this one. I have rolled with brown and black belt females that I outweighed by 50 pounds, and it didn't take much to submit them. And they were normally shocked, but it's like, I'm larger and stronger than you are, and I've got 5 or 6 years in BJJ training consistently. You have no chance, and sadly, it just kind of is what it is. If you are a smaller man, if you are older, you're in your 60s and 70s, when it comes to proportionality, you may be able to escalate a level of force that Dr. Fuller and I can't. Am I correct in saying that?
You are. Generally speaking, again, law dependent on jurisdiction. But that statement, I think, it's okay as far as it goes, the one that the AI gave, but it doesn't account for tools, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't account. It does account for skill, and that helps. Certainly helps. If you were completely untrained in fighting against those same women you just described, I think the outcome might not have been as certain or as simple. But you do have training, and more importantly, you have experience with violence, and that goes a long way. A lot of people, even in today's martial arts world, don't have real world experience with violence, and it's a vast difference between the violence on a mat and the violence in the street. Vast difference. I mean, there are rules on the mat. There are no rules out in the street, and tools give you a grand advantage. I mean, what the old saying goes that God created man and Sam Colt made him equal. Mm-hmm. Having the weapon is all well and good, but it doesn't mean that you can use it. An oft used phrase we have here on the show is, just because you own a piano doesn't make you a concert pianist, mm-hmm. right? I can go out tomorrow and buy an airplane. That doesn't make me a combat pilot. Going out and buying a gun doesn't necessarily mean you can defend yourself with it. Yes, it meets the legal definition of being armed, but it doesn't mean you're anything more than a loot drop for somebody that knows what they're doing and is willing to do it. Mm-hmm. So size and strength do matter, but they are not the be all end all. I mean, I've arrested plenty of people that outweighed me by 100, 150 pounds, who in a physical confrontation would have a very good chance of winning. But we never got to that point, right? Because I won the mental game before it ever started. And the point being, there are many factors, and size and strength are certainly pertinent factors, but they are not the be all end all.
Yeah, hopefully there we go. It's working again. John Shriver is on from Yukon, Oklahoma. Andrew Frisbee is on, and Andrew will be a guest on the show coming up very soon, hopefully. and you'll get to find out more about him. He is coin number 2563. Johnny King says, that's why strength and training is very important. Strong people are hard to mess with. That's a fact. Brian Schuler says, the only way to be confident in your defensive skills is to train with a shot timer and know exactly what your draw to first shot on target is. And, you got to dress to the gun, true. This cotton Ralph Lauren shirt I'm wearing is not as fast to draw from as, one of my 511 shirts that's purpose built. So you have to know that. I can't do a sub-second draw from this thing, not even close. It's going to take a while, or I'm going to tear the buttons off. So we have to think about that.
But again, it's training and knowledge and experience and knowing what you're capable of as an individual. With the gear that you have, it's a come as you are deal.
Yep.
So know what you're wearing, know what you're about, and comport yourself accordingly.
Agreed. Number 7, self-defense tools are foolproof. So that is a misunderstanding. It says tools like pepper spray or stun guns are aids, not guarantees. They can fail or be misused. Situational awareness and quick reactions are crucial, and some attackers may be immune or resistant to certain tools. Resistant to them, I don't know that I'd say they're immune to it. You may just have to inflict more damage to get them to stop doing what they're doing, and that's just what it is. What do you think about this one?
Well, I see this phrase applied mostly to firearms. People would say, "Oh, get a revolver; they don't jam. Get a shotgun, a slide action shotgun, because they can't fail." Well, I've seen people miss with shotguns. I've seen revolvers locked up tighter than Dick's hat band. There's any number of things that can go wrong. There are mechanical tools, and they can fail. Pepper spray, I'm sure you've seen it. You shoot people in the face and they act like you just sprayed them with, Paco Rabanne, right? It doesn't have the impact that you think it's going to have, or you're planning for it to have, which is why you'll usually see law enforcement when they go to employ pepper spray or they go to employ tasers, will have a cover officer with an actual firearm. And the whole idea behind that is you're planning for the eventuality that it fails. And you can, they can fail or be misused, right? You can certainly use them poorly and, exercise bad judgment. But I think the real concern here is that they can be taken away from you.
Amen. Yeah.
We all saw Silence of the Lambs back in the day. And at one point, Hannibal Lecter gets the pepper spray off of the officer that's incarcerating him and doesn't give him a 1-second blast to the eyes, right? He pumpkin heads the guy. Yeah, I get it. That's a fictional portrayal, but that's absolutely true. I mean, you and I are of an age that we remember when 20% of law enforcement fatalities in a given year resulting from adversarial action were killed with their own firearms.
Oh.
That used to be a leading factor for law enforcement before we had, level 2 and 3 holsters, before we trained on, fighting off a gun takeaway. Guns used to be taken away from cops on a frighteningly regular basis and used on them. And situational awareness goes back to what we've been saying for multiple slides today is, see the fight coming, right? See the problem before it fully develops and avoid it if you can.
Yeah. Amen. Johnny King says, if the attacker's drugged up, they're not going to feel it. That's exactly right. They have an altered state. They could be what's it called? Excited delirium or whatever it's called. So there's a lot of different reasons why these tools could fail. And a big thing that you just kind of breezed by, Dr. Fuller, but I think it's incredibly important, especially with the ubiquitousness of concealed carry in these states united, is that people can't maintain their firearm in an entanglement. You're not going to get that training from dad because he doesn't know it. You're not going to get it in the dojo. You're not going to get it at your CCW class. So where do you get it? Well, again, I'm going to make a plea for the American Warrior Society. When new members join, you can do an onboarding session telephonically with me. I'll learn about your goals and stuff like this and your situation. And normally what I'll ask is, do you know how to maintain your firearm in an entanglement? They don't have a clue what I'm talking about. So I'll direct them to the modules in the training vault of the American Warrior Society and say, watch these first. Find a training partner, do it safely, but you need to understand this, because if not, you're just a holster for somebody else. You may have brought the gun to the fight, but it doesn't mean you're going to be able to maintain the gun in the fight.
Right. And that's the problem with carrying a gun. A problem with carrying a gun is there's always a gun involved. And
That's
it's
right.
funny because even in law enforcement, in the course of my career, when we started out, you had firearms instructors and you had defensive tactics instructors.
Yes.
This
And
is
the
the
two
FBI.
were.
And the two didn't meet. And basically, from the contact point to 3 feet, firearms instructors didn't address.
Mm-hmm.
And outside of about 2 or 3 feet, defensive tactics instructors didn't address.
That's right.
And nobody was addressing there's a gun present and we're on the floor of an elevator and we're wrestling around.
Yeah.
Nobody addressed that. And that changed happily, not as much as it needs to, but it's becoming a more common training point in law enforcement now than it was. And I think that's largely driven by non-law enforcement trainers. I really do.
Yeah, thank God for folks like the Shiv Works Collective and what they started working on in the 90s. I've said this before. Me and Seeklander started working on the entangled gun grappling back in the 90s, and it was just a problem that we couldn't solve it, you know. Worked on it a lot, but I never felt confident that we had a product that was holistic enough to be useful. But this is something that you're gonna have to understand, and it's simple and easy and effective techniques. But if you don't know them, I mean, I've said this before. You know, Seeklander and I taught this at an NRA convention 8 or 9 years ago, and it was like we were, you know, giving out water. I mean, because people were like, whoa, I need this. I had no idea. I didn't know that. Because it's anyway, I could go all day on that one. But thank you to the 19 folks that are still with us. Number 8, self-defense means constant vigilance and fear. It is important to be aware of your surroundings, but developing confidence and a calm mindset is often more effective. Over fear or paranoia can impair judgment. Instead, aim for alertness combined with self-assurance. Your thoughts?
Well, self-defense as a phrase, you know, people sort of generally default to the idea that it's interpersonal violence. You're defending against interpersonal violence. And I would say that this slide in particular underscores the fact that it's not just interpersonal violence, intentional interpersonal violence. I've told the story before about how just being aware of my surroundings allowed me and my, at the time, 6-year-old daughter to avoid getting run over by a car. He was driven by a guy who was half in the bag and he paid no attention, jumped on the gas, took off, but we saw it coming in time to stop and get out of the way. You know, fire alarms. I've talked about this on the show before too. I've been in a movie theater when a fire alarm goes off and it just left. Just got up and walked out. And I was the only person, well, me and the people with me were the only people that got up and left. And that to me is self-defense, right? It's there's something is not right. Something is not going the way I expect it to go. I'm simply going to leave. I don't have to run. I don't have to panic. I don't have to freak out at this point. Maybe I'll get to that point, but just leave. So situational awareness and keeping your head on a swivel is a lifestyle choice. And it's not one where you're running from cover to cover with your hand on your concealed firearm. You know, you're doing 3 to 5 second buddy rushes across a parking lot to get to your car. And we've all met guys who are living very close to that edge. They're very intense. I get dizzy when I get near them because they're so intense. You don't have to live like that. But at the same time, don't live with your face in your phone. You know, don't be completely clueless of your surroundings because the world's a dangerous place. It's contact sport, you know, not just because somebody's going to come and hit you over the head with a pipe, but any number of things could happen. And keeping your head in the game and being cognizant of your surroundings is part of being a self-defender and taking care of yourself and those that depend on you.
Yeah. Dr. Gordon Botson is on. Well said, Dr. Fuller. And I was going to go back to when it comes to gun grappling, man. I wrote about this in my book also, but I was a bouncer. I don't even think the club had opened up, and it was like 3 levels. And I was kind of making my rounds and making sure, you know, the folks working the doors. We had multiple entrances that night. We had one through the viaduct where you had to walk down this long dark alleyway and come in that way, or you had one off the main street, and depending on the crowd. So I'm just kind of walking around, make sure the doormen are kind of situated. Nothing is coming out on the radio. Radio is completely silent, you know. But again, we haven't necessarily opened. Maybe there's a few people in the club, and I look down the stairs leading to the viaduct entrance, and I see our outside security were uniformed police officers. So we had like one at each door, but not on the inside. I look down there and this police officer is fighting with a giant black guy, dreadlocks, and he's got a pistol in his hand, and they're fighting on the ground. And I'm like, this is holy crap, you know? And I did not know the things I know now. So I go down there and I'm obviously trying to help the officer and keep the muzzle off of both of us. And I could not for the life of me get this, because this guy's like the size of an NBA player. He's a big, strong guy. I could not get his hand off it. So all I could do was just pop the mag release, pitch it out of the way, you know, and then hope, you know, I'd keep the muzzle off him so we didn't get shot. I can't say it enough, man. Now, your experience may vary, but you need to learn that stuff.
It's true.
Yeah.
And just being aware and knowing what to do. I'm sure your approach to that same problem today would be different than it was then. Maybe not necessarily your decision to intervene, but how you would have gone about it.
Yeah, we just ended up beating the living shit out of the guy.
And that's based on training.
Beating him into a set of handcuffs. I mean, I don't know that it would be, you know, hopefully be different nowadays. James says, will weapons retention be part of the high risk environment course? It absolutely will be. You got a 4-hour block on that. So yes, sir. Absolutely. Number 9, shortcut methods are reliable. Reliable on tricks or shortcuts without proper training can be dangerous. Effective self-defense involves understanding principles and practicing techniques regularly to be prepared for real world scenarios. What do you think?
Well, don't say this too loud, because you might, you know, rob many a trainer out there of their raison d'etre and their livelihood. You know, I trained on Shotokan and Shorinji karate for a lot of years, and I would say it was a solid 6 months to a year before I felt comfortable defending myself with it. I know that might be a testament to me and being a slow learner, but you know, there was no go in there for a day and now I'm ready to take on the world. You know, and I'm guilty of it too. There was a time when I taught women's self-defense classes that were relatively short. You know, they were multiple days, but they were, you know, 6-week classes, 8-week classes. And to me, that runs a serious risk in my perspective now. And there are lots of instructors out there that teach you things on a given day, you know, for X number of dollars, and then send you on your merry way. And, you know, look, in law enforcement, you're always going to seminars, right? You're always going to a class. Somebody's teaching you something somewhere. And you might do a 40-hour class for a week and come back to your department. And now you're the expert. You got the training on being, you know, painting widgets, Officer Brown. You're now the chief widget painter in our department, or whatever that might be. And it's a real risk. And I will tell you, from the perspective of a guy with a couple of graduate degrees in education, that bullet that you just read is absolutely correct. If you want adult learners to retain and be able to execute training, they need to get it multiple times over an extended period of time, and they need to practice it, and they need to practice it correctly. And if you do anything other than that, you'll lodge the information in short-term memory. But if it goes unpracticed, it will not stay. They will not be able to retain it, particularly in a high-stress, high-risk environment like a self-defense scenario. So relying on a quick trick that you learned in one afternoon or from a YouTube video is a surefire way to get yourself in trouble come the day that you actually have to execute that technique under pressure with risk involved.
Great. And you said pressure. You know, we talk a lot about pressure testing your techniques. And if they fall apart, then guess what? Maybe it's not the right technique. It may look sexy. It may be fun. It may be something you really enjoy and think highly of. But if it falls apart, anytime you put a fish suit on, or, you know, some MMA gloves and a mouthpiece and try it, it's just not going to work. But the only way you find out that is they're actually trying it. Shan Hemphill is on, the founder of Works Holsters. So glad to have you on, sir. It says, happy Friday, Rich and TC from Idaho, AWS lifetime member, coin number 40-something. Will Parker says, we encourage more education and training during and at the end of all of our classes, only about 1% return for more. I have these folks that I train on a weekly basis, and I'm like, they'll say, hey, let's work on that. I'm like, I don't want to work on that because this is live fire. You can do this at home, dry fire. Go dry fire this technique technique 50 times. We don't need to add live fire. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. But so much of this you don't have to do with real bullets. Last one, and I know we're bumping up against the time, Dr. Fuller. You have a prior commitment. Number 10, people don't need to practice self-defense regularly. Skills degrade without practice. Regular training, drills, and staying updated on techniques ensure your responses remain sharp and effective. Like any skill, consistency builds confidence and competence. I love that one.
Yeah, it feeds right off of the last slide. And it's absolutely true. You've got to get the information, and then you've got to practice the information. I do some private training as well, and the training that I give is largely, and I tell people take notes because a big chunk of what I teach techniques they can take with them and practice on their own. Because I will teach one or two people for 2 days, but that's not enough. That opens the door and perhaps gives you the information you need, but you now need to go practice. And I tell every one of my students, go get more training. Get it from me, get it from somebody else, get more training and practice. We see this in bad guys. Right? Bad guys rarely have formal training with firearms. It happens, but not very often. But they tend to do pretty well because a big piece of it is, research has shown, they have their gun in their hand every day.
Yeah.
They're fiddling with that gun constantly. When I was competing at a higher level, I practiced every day. I might not get to the range every day. And I was in Vermont for a lot of it. So, there's 6 feet of snow outside all the time. So dry fire was a big thing for me, but I was still able to run, in the master class on national level competitions because that gun was in my hand all the time. I mean, all day, every day, I was dry firing. I was practicing reloads. I was tearing the gun apart. I was putting it back together. And that led to confidence and competence. And I'm nothing special about that, folks. The same is true of you and yours. So I highly recommend you do exactly what that slide says.
Yeah. Ted says, thank you for the show. Reminding me of what I cannot do is very appreciated. Andrew says, TC, you are an excellent firearms instructor. Yes, you are. I've trained with you multiple times.
Well, he's gracious enough to say that. I was fortunate enough to be one of his initial firearms instructors decades ago when he first got into law enforcement. And then had an opportunity to train with him and some of his friends a couple of years ago as well. So I appreciate you saying that, Andrew. That's very gracious.
And I'm looking at a lot of the folks that are on this morning, and it appears to be mostly middle-aged men. And I think this is something I'll close with this and let you take us out, Dr. Flores. Mike and I have a saying that we stole from our good friend Brad DeLauder, and that is put your shoes on. And partly it goes back to corrections for me, because in a correction setting, if somebody starts lacing up their shoes, there's a fight fixing to kick off. If they're not wearing around their little day slippers and they start putting tennis shoes on, it's like, oh, here we go. Get ready. Bubba's fixing to take a swing on somebody. But it also means, like, I don't care how cool you were in the 90s. I don't want to see your resume. What can you do today? And if the answer is, well, not what I used to be able to, well, you got some training to do, my friend.
Yeah, the phrase in the FBI was always, let's take it to the mat.
Yes.
That's the idea, because everybody's always coming up with a new cool guy hand-to-hand technique. So let's they pay me this money. I'm going to come teach you this. And it's the thing. It's the panacea. It's the silver bullet. And the response was always, all right, let's take it on the mat.
Yep.
And let's try it. You do your technique and I'm going to legitimately resist you. And oh, by the way, I have some training and some knowledge and some experience. So if it works on me, then it'll probably work on somebody that doesn't have the training, knowledge, and experience. But you got to keep in mind, folks, and I think the point of this entire show today and all these bullets, and even AI seems to know it, the fight is coming. Be ready.